Right now, though, let's get back to the show today. We're talking MIR, Mars and everything out of space. Our guest is our own space expert, John Holloman, and what he doesn't know isn't worth knowing. He joins me here in our Atlanta studio, and let's get right back to some more Q&A. We have on the line Imran from India. Imran, what's your question?
Yeah, I want to know what kind of experiments and scientific research is done on MIR space station.
Well, what is being done right now is very limited. The main purpose, at least to the Americans, for going on board the MIR is to see how long-term periods of time and weightlessness affect the bodies of human beings, and specifically American human beings, because Russians have been doing this a lot longer than Americans have. And so Michael Foale and his predecessors on MIR have taken daily blood samples from themselves and from other members of the crew. They save virtually every bodily fluid at least once a day, which is one of the concerns about the damage to MIR. When they open up this Spectre module, which is where all the blood samples have been stored and where all the urine and spit samples have been stored up there, what are they going to find when they go in there? But that's one of the things. One of the interesting sets of experiments that Michael Foale was doing before the accident back on the 25th of June, he was growing a crop of beetles, black beetles, sort of ugly things about this size with two white spots on their black backs. And those beetles have been kept alive, we have been told. And Foale is also growing food crops in space, because if you're going to make a long-term space journey, say, for example, to Mars, which would take for human beings a couple of years, there's no way to store up enough food to feed everybody. You got to grow food in space, and you got to know how that works. And so Michael Foale is growing crops. He's growing from seed to seed, so to speak, through harvest, and then he's planting the seeds in the harvest and growing another crop to see how multiple generations of plants are working. And even though they've got a lot of trouble there, they don't have all the oxygen they need for themselves, they are able to grow at least some of the plants that Foale had on his agenda. It's mostly life science, biological science experiments, and observation. Everybody on MIR wants to look out the window because the view of Earth is so breathtaking, particularly because MIR has an orbit that covers about 95% of the Earth's surface, at least where you can see 95% of what's down here.
Got a bit of a look at it right there too. Now, as you know, I'm a novice, but I'm quite enjoying all of this space stuff that you've taught me as we've gone along. Let's talk, though. There are those like me who will marvel at our journey into the unknown, who will reel at the prospect of man on Mars. And there are those who will say, and they have a right to say, what a waste of money in a hungry world. What do you as a space fan say to that?
I say they may be right. But I also say it is fascinating to see what we learn up there. If planet Earth continues as it was 10 years ago, Michael, to get to a point where it just can't support the population of people, would it be nice to be able to send a couple million people to Mars and have a way for them to exist up there? What if it is possible to do that? One of the things in this Mars Pathfinder program, not the probe that is up on Mars right now, but a future one, is going to be a factory to see if it can manufacture fuel and breathable air from the rocks and the chemicals that are available on the surface of Mars. If this little mini factory can do its job, and it might land in this same landing zone where the Pathfinder provided us with these spectacular pictures of the Martian surface just back on the 4th of July, then there'd be a way to solve the human earthly population problem. It's pretty far out. I mean, the population's not going to grow to unprecedented dimensions in the near future, but it may if people continue to have babies as they are around the world right now.
Not to mention, I suppose, the advances in technology and medicines and that to help people on Earth. I suppose it's hard to put a price on that. Let's go now to Iris in the Philippines. Iris has a question for John.
Okay. How long will it take to fix the MIR space station?
Well, they say there are a lot of different things wrong with it, Iris. The immediate problem is getting the electricity back on so they can make all their very intensive electricity-using machines work. They plan at this moment, and this could change because this is real life up there, to do a spacewalk on the 20th of this month, which is, let's see, that's 15 days from right now. If everything goes well over the next few days, they'll probably get that done. They will do a spacewalk which would hook up the electrical system on MIR, and if that system has not been damaged, and if everything works the way they think it will work, they'll be back to full power, or 90% of full power, almost immediately. That'll be a major accomplishment for them. If that works, then they'll go to do an external spacewalk. They'll put their spacewalks on probably a week and a half later, go outside the space station, see why it is that the laboratory module where Michael Foale was living until the 25th of June is leaking air. If they can find this leak, and if it's a relatively simple leak, if it's just on the structure, the outer structure of the Spectre module, which was his home, then they'll be able to fix it. They have a repair kit where they can, it's not chewing gum, but it's a special tape that they can put over the outside, put more tape over the inside if that's possible, and make this thing come back together. And then they'll be able to reopen that module and do all the science experiments that they were trying to do before. That's going to take a little bit longer, but the initial spacewalk could be completed and the power problem could be solved by the end of the month, Iris.
We're going to take another short break. When we come back, well, let's find out from John what life is like living on Mir. We'll take another short break. Do stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Before we get back to today's show, let's have a quick look at what we have planned for tomorrow. We'll be talking about the Middle East and what the United States can do to improve the situation there. The peace process, as you're no doubt aware, is struggling. What are the chances for survival? As always, you can start sending your questions ahead of time by fax or email. The email address, you know it by now, cnni@turner.com. The fax number, 1404-827-4056. Hope you'll join us for that tomorrow. That's up on Q&A. For now, though, it's back to today's show and today's guest. We're talking with CNN's own resident space expert, John Holliman. Let's get back to some Q&A. Deborah's on the line in England. Deborah, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My question concerns Mir itself. It appears to be larger than what a rocket could carry into space, and I wondered if you knew how it got there initially. Was it assembled in space?
Yes, it was. It was, I guess, the first major modular space station. And the Americans and the other people involved in the International Space Station said, well, that's the only way to do it. You just can't do it with one rocket ship worth of stuff. And the fact that it has to be assembled in pieces is one of the reasons that it has some of the problems that it does. If you could build the whole thing down here and get a rocket ship big enough to get the whole thing into space, it might be possible to do a much better job of constructing.
Well, how big is it, John? We got pictures there. What are we looking at? A football field?
30, 40 meters? No, it's not as large as it might. Well, that's a pretty good estimation of it. It's about the size of this room. It's, maybe I'm thinking
a third of a soccer pitch, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. And,
okay. On the line, John in Germany. John, what's your question for John?
Yes, good evening. My question is just the opposite of what the young lady just asked. They got the mirror up there and everything now. When its life has ended, how are they going to dispose of this thing? Are they going to dismantle it up there and bring it back to Earth? And how come they let all this other space junk float around up there and don't hesitate to bring it down?
What a good question.
Yeah, well, they're not gonna disassemble it and bring it back. They're gonna let it burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. That's about the only way they can do it, given the various constraints that they have.
So
and
they don't leave it up there floating around either, do they?
Well, they're going to leave it, and by leaving it, the forces of gravity and the forces of friction as it moves through, the particles that are left out in the outer atmosphere will bring it back into the Earth's atmosphere. It'll burn up. Probably most of it will burn up in space. You'll remember, Michael, I know your home country is Australia. Back when the Space Hab and the Skylabs were up there, they came down and created a great deal of concern in Australia that they were going to knock off people and animals, and it turned out there wasn't a great deal of damage there, but there was a lot of concern about it.
But they were lucky with that it landed in an area that was uninhabited down in the south of Western Australia, and I remember that very clearly, and there were some big chunks of that.
Oh, yeah.
Would that be likely to happen this way?
It is possible with a ship the size of Mir that, yeah, there could be big chunks, and the re-entry problem is going to be a problem, but there's no way to disassemble it, and and there's no way to put it back in the rockets that brought it up, or there's nothing the size of it'd have to be something much bigger than the space shuttle with its cargo bay to bring these chunks back to Earth.
Let's try to squeeze one more call in. Germany's watching tonight. Germany, what's your call?
Hello. Apparently there's a fundamental difference in level of technology between Americans and Russians. So my question is there any true exchange of scientific knowledge between them? Secondly, What can the Americans learn from Russians, and vice versa? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll
Very
try to do it
John.
quickly. Yes, there is a different level in technology, but it's not that the Americans are better or the Russians are better. It's just different. The Russians do things differently. The Americans have learned a lot from the Russians, and the Russians have learned some things from the Americans in various aspects of spaceflight because they've been cooperating for a couple of years. One of the major things that the Americans have learned from the Russians is you got to do it modular. You got to do it piece by piece. One of the things that the Russians have learned from the Americans is conditioning in space and some of the American technology to make it easier to readapt to gravity once you get back to Earth.
It's amazing. We did this show at the last minute, but we could go on for hours. John Holloman, always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Mark.
But I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thanks for being with us today on short notice. My thanks also to you, our viewers, at home for tuning in. Also at short notice, General George Julwan, who was supposed to be with us today, is being rescheduled for later this month. So if you send a question for him, don't worry, we'll hang on to it. And remember, for the latest information on upcoming show topics and guests, do check out the CNN Q&A webpage. You can access it at cnn.com/Q&A. And we'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of Q&A. Hope to see you then. For now, though, stay tuned to CNN. There's much more to come. Bye-bye.
If you're headed to Paris or you're in Paris or